Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you the French defense. So the French defense starts with e4 and then black plays e6. This is called the puck defense. In the French defense, black plays e6. So after e6, there are many ways white can tackle this. One is d4. It's called a normal variation. You're just taking up space. So black's objective is to play d5 and it has a protector. So if you close up the position, it's called the advanced variation. If you take the pawn, it's called the exchange variation, in which you don't have the e file is totally open for rooks to attack after the king's castle. So let's talk about the advanced variation first. So after the advanced variation, there are many ways. One is c5, challenging black's d pawn, so that this can become weak if white takes. So if white takes, black takes with the bishop, and he's already in lead for a development and has a better position because white's pawn is isolated. So instead of taking, white can reinforce his pawn with c3, building a big pawn structure. So if black takes, then white just takes back and everything is normal. But black's best move here is to keep on attacking that pawn with knight c6. So after knight c6, white reinforces it back and developing a piece with knight f3. This is called the Paulson attack, and black plays queen b6, making a third attacker. So there are many ways to deal with this. One is a3, which is a good move, and a4 is also fine, trying to attack the queen. Or you could play bishop e3, reinforcing the pawn again, but that comes with queen x b2, attacking the rook on a1. So bishop e3 isn't obviously a very good move. So instead, what should white play? White can go for trading the queens, but it doubles your pawns on the b file. Or you can go for the Miller-Barry gambit. So if black just doesn't know the gambit and takes, after these series of trades, if black takes with the queen, you play check, and there's discovered check on the queen. So if you encounter the Miller-Barry gambit, instead of just trading it, you should first play bishop d7, stopping this attack. Or also a3 is fine, but it still encounters the discovered attack. You can also just don't care about the Miller-Barry gambit and start developing your pieces any way you want. So if here there are many ways. Also, knight a3 isn't a very good move because it doesn't do anything and it's in the corner. So if we come back here, white can also play bishop b5 check, disregarding the attack on the d pawn. So after this, if black develops his knight, then obviously this is not a threat anymore because it loses one attacker after you take with the bishop. So after this, you have no more attackers on this pawn except this, which you can just reinforce, and the queen can also not attack this. because it's blocked by the pawn. And after takes, you can also just develop this pawn knight, defending the pawn. And here, if we go back here again, if you play knight f3, it's called the advanced Nimzowitsch system. So you're protecting it with the knight, and you can put it, and if black takes, you put the knight in the center. So here, if you play something else like bishop e3, it's also fine because you're attacking the pawn 2 times. There's an attacker behind it. Also c3, after c3 for black, after attacking, you can also just play this, reinforcing your knight instead of attacking anything. And then after white develops normally, let's just say bishop d3, you play knight f5. So you're adding another attacker. And if white takes, now you have a bishop pair and white loses his bishop pair. So it's a better advantage for black. So let's say after this, white pins black's knight so that it doesn't give a big threat. And also, I see that the threat here is taking this. You don't need to worry about that, because after the knight moves away to either knight f5 or knight g6, then you can just take the pawn, because blocking with this would just weaken the structure a bit. With a5, you attack that pawn. So after pinning, you don't need to worry about the pin much. Just play bishop d7, reinforcing the knight. I know it looks a bit passive, but it's going to give you some good results. So here, instead of the advanced, if you take the pawn, black can do 2 things. Either take with the queen, which isn't a very good move because the knight can attack it and anything else gets into the game before black can develop. So after ex d5, the files are open, so the first one to castle gets the better rook if the file is totally open and there are no pieces blocking the file. So most beginners like to check with the queens, but that isn't a very good move because black can just block and he's already developed a piece. So if we go back here, instead you can play normal developing moves, knight f3, knight c3, or even get out the bishops. It's fine, but instead of the advance, there's another variation here. Instead of d4, you can play f4. It's called the Labordinas, I can't pronounce that, variation. So you prevent this attack by playing this, and he can't attack you, and the opponent can't attack you with c5 anymore. And you can also, after developing, you can also put a third pawn here on d4. So the e5 pawn is now a very solid pawn. So here, instead of that variation, you can also play knight f3, and then if they play d5, you can play knight c3, which is called the knight variation, 2 knights variation. So what this does is that it protects the pawn and also develops 2 knights at the same time. So if black pushes instead, he does have a isolated pawn and which can be targeted by 2 knights. And if black tries to defend it, he's going to have some serious problems defending it. And you can just stop the pawn from moving forward and attack it. So here, another variation that you can try out is just pushing the pawn forward. It's called the Steinitz attack. So if black plays d5 anyway, you can take en passant, or you can just leave it alone and continue with any of the two variations. So here another variation, wait a second, okay, so another variation is c4. It's called a Steiner variation. It also prevents the d5 pawn. So if black plays d5, you take, and then it's more like the exchange variation, but you have a half open c file, which after the knight's attack, so the queen has to go back or just slide over to the a file, and then after some moves you reach this position, and then you can just play rook c1. It has a very strong file, and if black opens it, obviously the rook's going to be the boss of that file after the knight moves. So here another variation is bishop, wait, yeah, so it's c3, which after exchange you can just play d4, and you have two bishops outside lines, and this bishop is a bit boxed because it can only go to these two squares because of these pawns on the dark squares, which are preventing its development. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.